Here's a question that keeps me up at night, not the equations, not the particles, something much stranger. I want you to pinch yourself. Go ahead, do it. Feel that. There is something there, something experiencing that pinch, something aware. Now here's the disturbing part. We know exactly what your skin is made of. Atoms, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. We know what your nerves are made of. The same stuff. We know what your brain is made of. 86 billion neurons, 100 trillion connections, all of it, atoms, just atoms. But where is the thing that felt the pinch? Point to it. Can you point to where your mind is? You will point to your head. Everybody does. But when we open up the head, when we look inside with all our fancy instruments, we find neurons, we find electrical signals, we find chemistry. We never find the thing that is doing the experiencing. This is not a small puzzle. This is the deepest problem in all of science, and I am going to show you why it is so disturbing and why, after everything physics has accomplished, we still do not have the faintest idea what is going on. By the end of this talk, you will understand the real question. You will see why all the easy answers fail, and you might just walk away wondering if the universe is far stranger than any of us have dared to imagine. Let me start with something simple, something familiar. Look around the room you are in. You see colors, you see shapes, you hear sounds. Maybe you feel the chair beneath you or the floor under your feet. All of this seems obvious, natural, just the way things are. But stop and think about what is really happening. Light bounces off objects, electromagnetic radiation, photons. They enter your eye. They hit your retina. That triggers electrical signals in your optic nerve. Those signals travel to the back of your brain to a place called the visual cortex. Neurons fire, patterns form, and then something extraordinary happens. Something utterly inexplicable. You see red, you see blue, you experience the world. The light is not red. The light is just electromagnetic radiation with a certain wavelength, about 700 nanometers. There is nothing red about it. The neurons firing in your brain are not red either. They are just cells doing chemistry, sodium ions flowing in and out, electrical potentials changing. So where does the red come from? This is what philosophers call qualia, the felt quality of experience, the redness of red, the painfulness of pain, the taste of chocolate. These are not just information. They are experiences. Somebody is home having them. I once wrote a little poem about this. Standing at the seashore, watching the waves, mountains of molecules, each stupidly minding its own business. Trillions apart, yet forming white surf in unison. And there I am, atoms with consciousness, matter with curiosity, a universe of atoms, an atom in the universe. That is the puzzle. How do atoms become aware? Now wait, you might think we know the answer. The brain. Obviously consciousness comes from the brain, but that is not an answer. That is just pointing at the box where the mystery lives. Let me give you an analogy. Suppose I ask you how a car moves and you say the engine. Okay? But what about the engine? Well, there are pistons. They go up and down. Fine. What makes them go up and down? Fuel explodes, pushes them. Aha, now we are getting somewhere. We can trace the whole chain. Fuel burns, expansion, pressure, pistons move, crankshaft turns, wheels spin, car moves. Every step is mechanical, physical. We understand each link. Now try the same thing with the brain. Photons hit retina, okay? Electrical signals travel through nerves, okay? Neurons fire in patterns, okay? And then somehow you experience the color red. Where is that step? What is the mechanism? What converts electrical activity into felt experience? Nobody knows. We do not even know what kind of answer would satisfy us. This is what David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness, not the easy problems. The easy problems are things like, how does the brain process information? How does it control behavior? How does it integrate signals from different senses? Those are hard engineering problems. But they are tractable. We can imagine solving them. The hard problem is different. The hard problem is why there is any experience at all. Why is all this information processing accompanied by an inner life? Why is there something it is like to be you? Let me put it another way. Imagine you could build a perfect robot. It sees, it hears, it moves, it speaks, it does everything you do. From the outside, it behaves exactly like a conscious being, but inside, nothing. No experience, no inner life, just machinery processing information in the dark. Is such a robot possible? We do not know, but here is the point. From the physics alone, from the chemistry alone, from the neuroscience alone, we cannot tell the difference. Nothing in our equations says that certain arrangements of matter should have inner experiences and others should not. The philosopher Thomas Nagel wrote a famous paper about this. He asked a deceptively simple question. What is it like to be a bat? Think about it. Bats navigate by sonar. They send out high-pitched sounds and listen for the echoes. They can detect the shape, size, texture, and movement of insects in complete darkness. This is their primary way of knowing the world. Now you might try to imagine what that is like. You close your eyes, you imagine sending out sounds and hearing them bounce back. But Nagel says you cannot really do this. You are imagining what it would be like for you to have sonar. You are not imagining what it is like for the bat. The bat has its own inner life, its own experiences, its own way of being in the world, and we cannot access that. Not because we lack information, but because experiences are fundamentally subjective. They exist only from a particular point of view. This is the crux of the problem. Science is objective. We study things from the outside, we measure, we quantify, we build models, but consciousness is subjective. It exists from the inside, and we do not know how to bridge that gap. Let me tell you something that will make this even more puzzling. Your brain contains about 86 billion neurons. That is a lot. About as many as stars in the Milky Way. Each neuron connects to thousands of others. The total number of connections is around 100 trillion. 100 trillion. That is a number so large it is hard to fathom. If you tried to count to 100 trillion, one number per second, it would take you over 3 million years. But here is the thing. These neurons are scattered all over your brain. The ones that process vision are in the back. The ones that process sound are on the sides. The ones that process touch are along the top. Different features of the same object are handled in different places. The color of an apple is processed separately from its shape, separately from its location, separately from its motion. And yet when you look at an apple, you do not see a red blob here and a round shape there in a certain location somewhere else. You see one apple, one unified experience. How does your brain take all these scattered pieces and bind them together into a single coherent experience? This is called the binding problem, and nobody has solved it. Some researchers thought they had found the answer. Neurons that fire together wire together. If neurons in different parts of the brain all fire at the same time, at the same rhythm, maybe that synchrony is what binds them. Maybe that is how the brain says these things go together. This is a nice idea, and there is some evidence for it. Neurons do synchronize their firing, often at frequencies around 40 cycles per second, the gamma rhythm. But here is the trouble. Synchrony does not explain experience. It just pushes the question back a step. Suppose I tell you that neurons A, B, and C all fire at 40 hertz. That tells me something about the timing of their activity. But it does not tell me why that synchronized activity feels like anything. It does not explain why there is an experiencer who experiences the unified apple. Let me give you another way to see this. There are neurons firing in my brain right now. There are neurons firing in your brain right now. Some of mine might even be firing at the same frequency as some of yours. But we do not share an experience. Your consciousness is yours. Mine is mine. Why? The neurons are just cells. They do not know whose brain they are in. They just do their chemistry. So what makes your neurons your experience and my neurons my experience, I do not know. And as far as I can tell, nobody knows. Now let me tell you something even stranger. Let me show you how deep this rabbit hole goes. Your brain is made of atoms, about 7 octillion of them. That is a 7 with 27 zeros after it. And these atoms are made of smaller things, protons, neutrons, electrons. The protons and neutrons are made of quarks. The electrons, as far as we know, are fundamental. Now here's a question. Take one atom out of your brain. Are you still conscious? Surely one atom cannot matter. You lose atoms all the time. You breathe them out, you sweat them out, they get replaced. The atoms in your body today are not the same atoms that were there 7 years ago. Almost all of them have been swapped out, so consciousness does not depend on any particular atoms. It must depend on the arrangement, the pattern, the information. But wait, the atoms are not really solid things. They are mostly empty space. The nucleus is tiny. The electrons are somewhere in a cloud of probability, and the forces between them are electromagnetic. When you touch something, you are not really touching anything. Electrons in your hand are repelling electrons on the table. It is all fields and forces. So your brain is not really a thing. It is a pattern of activity in fields. Electromagnetic fields, quantum fields, a constantly shifting dance of energy. And somehow that dance knows it is dancing. There is an idea that has been gaining attention. Maybe consciousness is not produced by the brain in the way a generator produces electricity. Maybe consciousness is more like what electricity is to the generator. Let me explain. The brain generates electromagnetic fields. Whenever neurons fire, they create tiny fluctuations in the electric and magnetic fields around them. These fields extend through and beyond the brain. You can measure them with EEG. You can measure them with MEG. Now, some researchers suggest that these electromagnetic fields are not just byproducts. They might be where consciousness lives. The idea is that the unified field integrates information in a way that scattered neurons cannot. When neurons fire synchronously, their fields add up, constructive interference. When they fire out of sync, their fields cancel out, destructive interference. This would explain the binding problem. The field is not scattered like the neurons. The field is everywhere all at once. It could bind experiences together because it is inherently unified. Is this the answer? I do not know. It is an interesting idea, but it still does not explain why an electromagnetic field should feel like anything. Magnets have fields. Radios have fields. We do not think they are conscious. Why should the brain's field be different? Let me try another angle. Some physicists have suggested that consciousness might involve quantum mechanics. This is a tempting idea because quantum mechanics is already strange. Particles can be in two places at once. Measurements can affect outcomes. Entanglement connects distant things in spooky ways. Roger Penrose, a brilliant mathematician, proposed that quantum effects in tiny structures inside neurons might be important for consciousness. The structures are called microtubules. They are part of the cell's skeleton. Penrose and Stuart Hameroff suggested that quantum computations in these microtubules might give rise to conscious experiences. This is a bold idea, but there is a problem. The brain is warm and wet. Quantum effects are delicate. They get destroyed very quickly in such environments. Most physicists think the brain is too noisy for quantum mechanics to play a significant role. But here is the thing. Even if quantum effects were involved, it would not really solve the problem. Quantum mechanics is still physics. It tells us how things behave, not why they feel like anything. Saying consciousness is quantum does not explain consciousness. It just makes it quantum and mysterious instead of classical and mysterious. We keep running into the same wall. We can describe the brain in more and more detail. We can map every neuron, trace every connection, measure every signal, and at the end of it all, we still do not know why any of this activity is accompanied by experience. Let me try a thought experiment. Imagine we could record every single thing happening in your brain while you look at a red apple. Every neuron firing, every chemical released, every electrical potential changing. We store all this information in a computer. Now imagine we play it back. We recreate all the exact same signals in a different brain or maybe in an artificial system. The patterns are identical. Does this new system experience seeing a red apple? You might think, yes, same pattern, same experience, but wait. We could slow it down. Play the recording at half speed. Is the experience now in slow motion? We could play it backwards. Does the system experience seeing the apple disappear? We could scramble the recording, play all the signals in random order. Is there still an experience? Presumably not, but why not? Every signal still occurs. Every component is there. The difference is the relationships between them, the structure. So consciousness depends on structure. Fine. But what structure? What makes one arrangement conscious and another not? Here is an even stranger version. Imagine we write down all the information about your brain at a single moment, all the positions and states of all the particles. We put this information in a book, a very large book. Is the book conscious? It contains all the same information as your brain at that moment. You probably want to say no. The book is just ink on paper. It is not doing anything. There is no activity, no process. Consciousness seems to require not just information, but processing, change over time. But how much processing and what kind? These questions do not have clear answers. Let me tell you something that really bothers me. We know a lot about how the brain works. We know which areas light up when you see faces. We know which areas are active when you feel fear. We know that damage to certain areas causes specific deficits. Damage the fusiform face area and you cannot recognize faces. Damage the hippocampus and you cannot form new memories. All of this is wonderful neuroscience, but notice what it is. It is correlations. Brain activity A correlates with experience B. We find the neural correlates of consciousness. But correlates are not explanations. If I tell you that a thermometer reading correlates with temperature, I have not explained temperature. The thermometer is just measuring something. The question is, what is being measured? When we find neural correlates of consciousness, we are finding where and when consciousness is associated with brain activity. We are not finding how or why that activity becomes experience. Some people think this is just a matter of more research. Once we understand the brain better, the mystery will dissolve. Consciousness will turn out to be an emergent property, like wetness emerges from water molecules. The molecules are not wet individually, but put enough of them together and wetness appears. I am not so sure. Wetness is not really a deep mystery. We understand what it is for something to be wet. Molecules move around. They stick to surfaces. They flow. Wetness is just a way of describing certain behaviors of matter at a large scale. Consciousness is different. It is not just a behavior. It is not just a pattern. It is the fact that there is something it is like to be the system. That is a different kind of thing altogether. Let me put it this way. Suppose I gave you a complete description of a brain, every atom, every connection, every process, and suppose I asked you to predict what the person would do, what they would say, how they would behave. In principle, with enough computing power, you could do this. The brain is physical. It obeys physical laws. But now, suppose I asked you a different question. What is this person experiencing right now? What does it feel like to be them? The complete physical description does not answer this question. It cannot, because the question is asking about something subjective, something from the inside, and the physical description is all from the outside. This is what philosophers call the explanatory gap. There is a gap between physical descriptions and conscious experiences, and we do not know how to bridge it. Now, some people try to avoid this problem. They say consciousness is an illusion. There is nobody really home. The brain just processes information and generates reports about having experiences. But there is no actual experiencer. I find this very hard to take seriously. An illusion for whom? If there is an illusion, there must be someone being fooled, and that someone is having an experience, the experience of being fooled. You cannot eliminate consciousness by saying it is an illusion, because having an illusion is itself a kind of experience. This is not like other illusions. A mirage looks like water, but there is no water. Fine. The appearance of water is an illusion, but the appearance itself is real. You are really having a visual experience that resembles water. Saying consciousness is an illusion would be like saying the appearance is an illusion too. But then what is having the appearance? We are going in circles. And that, I think, tells us something important. Consciousness is not like other problems. It is not going to be solved by the usual methods. We might need entirely new concepts, new ways of thinking. Let me tell you what I think the situation is, and I want to be honest. This is speculation. This is a physicist at the edge of what we know, looking into the darkness. I think consciousness might be fundamental. I do not mean that everything is conscious, though some people believe that. I mean that consciousness might be like mass or charge or space-time, not derivable from something more basic, just there as a feature of reality. If this is true, then we should not expect to explain consciousness in terms of physics. We should expect to find laws that connect consciousness to physics, just as we have laws that connect mass to motion or charge to electromagnetic fields. This is not a popular view among physicists. We like to explain things. We like to reduce complex phenomena to simple components. But maybe consciousness is where reduction stops. Maybe it is bedrock. I do not know if this is right, but I think it is worth taking seriously because after centuries of trying, after all our progress in neuroscience and physics, we still have not made 1 inch of progress on the hard problem. That should tell us something. Let me leave you with this thought. You are sitting there listening to me or reading this, whatever the case may be. You are having experiences right now. The sound of these words, the sight of this room, the feeling of your body. All of this is happening. It is undeniable. It is the most certain thing there is. And yet, from the point of view of physics, you are a collection of atoms. Just atoms. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and a few trace elements. Quarks and electrons arranged in a very complicated pattern, yes, but still just atoms. Those atoms were forged in the hearts of stars billions of years ago. They floated through space, gathered into planets, combined into molecules, organized into cells, grew into organisms, and eventually became you. And now those atoms are looking back at the universe and wondering where they came from. Matter with curiosity. Atoms with consciousness. The universe waking up to itself. Is there anything more astonishing than that? I do not have the answer to the mystery of consciousness. Nobody does. But I think it is one of the most important questions we can ask because it is not just a question about the brain. It is a question about what we are. It is a question about what the universe is. And maybe, just maybe, when we finally understand consciousness, we will understand everything differently. We will see that the universe is not just matter in motion. We will see that it is, in some deep way, aware of itself, and that we are that awareness, looking out through 86 billion neurons, wondering at the wonder of it all. But wait, I want to push this further because I have not told you about some of the strangest experiments, the ones that really twist your intuitions. There is a surgery called a corpus callosotomy. Doctors sometimes perform it on patients with severe epilepsy. The corpus callosum is a thick bundle of nerve fibers that connects the left and right hemispheres of your brain, about 200 million fibers. Cut it, and the hemispheres cannot talk to each other anymore. What happens? The patients seem mostly normal. They walk around, they talk, they live their lives, but when you test them carefully, something bizarre emerges. Show a picture to the left visual field. It goes to the right hemisphere. That hemisphere cannot speak because language is usually in the left hemisphere. Ask the patient what they saw and they say nothing, but ask them to draw what they saw with their left hand, which is controlled by the right hemisphere, and they draw the picture perfectly. The left hemisphere does not know what the right hemisphere saw, but the right hemisphere knew. It just could not say. Now here is the question. Does this patient have one consciousness or two? Is there one person in there with two separate streams of information, or are there two persons sharing one body, each unaware of the other? The patients say they feel like one person, but the patients who say that are using their left hemisphere to speak. What would the right hemisphere say if it could talk? We do not know, and this uncertainty goes to the heart of the mystery. What are the boundaries of a consciousness? Where does one mind end and another begin? Let me give you another thought experiment. Imagine a machine, a teleporter. It scans every atom in your body, every position, every state, everything. It transmits this information to Mars, and on Mars, it assembles a perfect copy of you from new atoms. The original here on Earth is destroyed in the scanning process. The person on Mars wakes up. They have all your memories. They think they are you. They remember stepping into the teleporter on Earth. From their perspective, there was no interruption. They blink, and they are on Mars. But is that person you? Some people say yes. What matters is the pattern, not the atoms. The atoms get replaced all the time anyway. If the pattern is preserved, you are preserved. Other people say no. You died when the scanner destroyed your body. The person on Mars is a copy, a very good copy with your memories and personality, but still a copy, a new person who falsely believes they are you. How would you decide? Both versions have the same claim to be you. Both have your memories, your personality, your sense of being you. There is no test that could distinguish them, no experiment that would reveal which one is the real you. This is deeply unsettling because it suggests that there might not be a fact of the matter. There might not be a real you that persists through time, just a series of momentary experiences stitched together by memory into the illusion of continuity. But then who is having the illusion? You see how we keep coming back to the same problem? Every time we try to think our way out of it, we end up right back where we started. There is something it is like to be you, and we do not know what that something is. Let me try yet another approach. Let us think about what consciousness does. Here is an interesting observation. Everything you are aware of is slightly in the past. Light takes time to travel to your eyes. Sound takes time to reach your ears. Nerve signals take time to reach your brain. Processing takes time. By the time you are aware of something, it happened a fraction of a second ago, but you do not experience the world as delayed. You experience it as happening now. Your brain must be doing something to stitch together information that arrives at different times. It creates a unified present moment out of scattered signals. This is another binding problem, temporal binding. How does the brain bind events from different times into a single experience of the present? And here's another puzzle. You do not experience the gaps, you blink, and the world does not go dark. Your eyes make tiny movements called saccades, and during those movements you are effectively blind. But you do not notice. Your brain papers over the gaps. So your experience of the world is not a direct perception. It is a construction, a model, a best guess based on incomplete and delayed information. Your brain is a prediction machine, constantly filling in the blanks, smoothing over inconsistencies, creating the appearance of a seamless, continuous reality. Tell me what you think in the comments below.